Ahoy, my favorite friends and gamers! Welcome to the second episode of the Yapping session series. Today's epic topic will be mouthwashing. Very quick spoiler warning, this video will contain spoilers for the game Mouthwashing. I will be yapping about it a lot, therefore there will be spoilers. I think that the plot/story in this game is super interesting and I love it a lot. They did amazing work on this game. I think the voice acting in the game is amazing. I think more would have been even better. I assume it was a time constraint thing. Like I said, they did amazing work with this game and story. I think the game is a perfect storm of bad events. I wasn't sure if I could make a whole video about this itself. I wanted to yap a bit more about mouthwashing though today. Starting off with a few things that I think would have prevented the events of the game altogether. I think a lock on the sleeping quarters would have prevented Jimmy from doing what he did to Anya. I think if Swansea hadn't fallen into self-pity and drank the mouthwash, he would have been the hero. I think if he were sober and didn't drink the mouthwash, Jimmy wouldn't have been able to trick him and knock him out with the drink he makes in-game. I personally thought Swansea almost caught Jimmy for the rat he was a few different times. He's also not afraid to stand up to Jimmy. I think he was so close to being the hero who saved the day. I also wanted to give a big thank you at this time to all of you. My mouthwashing video, I did a song analysis for the song It's Over by the lovely team JT Music, a song breakdown, and it got a decent amount of views. I just kind of made that video, wasn't expecting a whole lot of support, but thank you all so much for the support on the recent videos, not just the most recent mouthwashing video. I thought it was going to underperform, and it's gotten pretty decent views, but on my other videos more recently, I wanted to say a huge thank you at this time. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but you are watching a Yapping session series video, so this is kind of what you signed up for. Again, just a massive thank you to all of you. I was not expecting all the views, and I've gotten some really nice comments, so thank you all so much for the supportive comments. It really means a lot. Yapping a bit more about things that I think would have prevented the events of mouthwashing is some pretty obvious ones, like putting Jimmy on the no-fly list, Curly noticing some red flags, or just deciding not to bring him along on that voyage would have prevented what he did to Anya, therefore he wouldn't have crashed the ship. I think that Curly truly ended up saving everybody's lives. I think a lot of people overlook that detail in-game, that Curly runs into the cockpit probably knowing he's either going to die or be severely injured, and he is, and he does it anyways, which I think is an important detail that a lot of people don't acknowledge, is that Curly gave up a lot in order to save the rest of the crew, and then Jimmy beats him later when he cannot defend himself, which is obviously one of the most upsetting parts of the game. Something about mouthwashing I wanted to bring up that I don't think fit neatly into any of my other videos is at a point in the game whenever they find out that they've been carrying mouthwash as cargo, Anya says something along the lines of the sugar content probably cancels out any effect as a disinfectant. I think, and this is just my own little personal theory, I haven't heard anyone talk about this, I think the mouthwash was meant to be drank and like consumed, which obviously most mouthwash isn't. At least my little theory and idea behind this is that the Dragon Breath brand mouthwash is meant to be drank and consumed like an alcoholic beverage, which is why it has so much sweetener in it to make it drinkable. Because at least in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense to put a lot of sugar into mouthwash because that cancels out the entire point. Now that I think about it, maybe that's what they were going for. The fact that it's useless mouthwash, the sugar makes it worse, so then you'll have to use more mouthwash. I think it could really go either way. I really do think that the Dragon Breath brand mouthwash could be meant to be drank and consumed like an alcoholic beverage, but I also think that there's a high likelihood that the Dragon Breath brand mouthwash isn't effective so that you'll keep buying more of it. Things like that are just why I find this game so interesting. There's so much conversation to be had about the events of the game, or at least things surrounding it like that. I mentioned it in a different video, the It's Over song analysis by JT Music, but I do think that it's not a coincidence that Pony Express cargo delivery is that a pony, which is a type of horse. I talked about it more in that video, so go check that out if you're interested at all, but I think that the reason it's a pony is because they're working them like a horse. Because if I think about it long enough, it just makes sense that they're working them like a horse because there's only one nurse on the ship with Nurse Anya. Shouldn't there be a doctor? I think it's highly irresponsible that they're making them fly with one mechanic, one nurse, a captain, and a co-pilot. No offense, but even if you're cutting corners and trying to save money on manpower, that's not enough people for a ship. I have never done space cargo delivery, so maybe it's not my place to critique Pony Express. I would imagine with space cargo delivery, though, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. wrong. I've been saving this character and topic for a little bit, but Daisuke. He was kind of a last-minute addition to the Tulpar crew. I like Daisuke, but what I wanted to say with him is that I think if he were a bit more confident, he also could have been the hero in a similar way that Swansea wasn't, but could have been. When I think about the events of the game, Jimmy is a manipulator. Jimmy is a villain. Jimmy is a piece of shit asshole, and we all hate him. My point in saying that, though, is that manipulators are usually quite good at it. I think he manipulates Daisuke, and a lot of people would probably say that's pretty obvious because he tricks him into climbing into the electrical vents. But really, what authority does Jimmy have over Daisuke? The only thing I can think of is that he's co-pilot and Daisuke's an intern. Daisuke seems much more capable than Jimmy, though, to be honest with you. He's younger, he's probably stronger. I think Daisuke would have rocked Jimmy's shit if he realized what he was up to, but he ended up getting tricked because he wasn't confident enough. Jimmy is the kind of person who catches on to things like that so that he can manipulate people, at least in my opinion. So I think he saw Daisuke's insecurity and knew he needed to take advantage of that. In this section, I'm going to yap a bit more about Captain Curly specifically and the things I think he did wrong, but why ultimately I don't think everything is his fault. If you really think about it, Jimmy is the villain, Jimmy is the one who hurts people, Jimmy is the murderer, the manipulator, but Curly is ultimately also responsible because he enabled that behavior by Jimmy. Not only did he let Jimmy become co-pilot, probably through something like recommendation because he's his friend, but he stood by and let things happen. I don't want to be too harsh on Curly because ultimately he probably already blames himself a lot, but there's a few things I wanted to note about Curly. The first one being, when he talks to Anya, he says he stares at the ceiling or tosses and turns all night. I think is subtle foreshadowing to once he becomes Crispy Curly, the post-crash. Afterwards, he can only toss and turn and stare at the ceiling, which is quite upsetting, but just an interesting detail I wanted to point out. The other thing is that Curly says I should have made a bigger fuss about things like that when he's talking to Anya, I think. So ultimately, Curly knew that things like the lock on the sleeping quarters needed to be a thing, but he didn't make a big enough fuss about it. I think that is ultimately Curly's fault because he's the captain. It's up to him to notice things like that. I think the events of Mouthwashing are just a perfect storm of bad shit happening. I think that this game is extremely interesting, and in my opinion, it does reverse horror, where we are the villain. You play as Jimmy for a large portion of the game, and the other portions of the game you're playing as Curly, who's ultimately also responsible, although not the villain. I think that Curly really needed to step up, and there were quite a few mistakes that he made, but I do still think that his punishment doesn't fit the crime, if that makes sense. I think Curly suffers way more than he deserves to. I think a lot of the people on the Tulpar do not deserve what happens to them whatsoever. In fact, I would say most of them. The only one I would say that deserves a bad fate is Jimmy, and ultimately he still doesn't even fix anything by the end of the events of the game. And again, even that in itself is really cool to me, that Jimmy is so delusional that he sees himself as the hero. He's constantly saying mean things to other people and then just kind of takes no responsibility or accountability for the things that he says. Like I said, a lot of these thoughts that I have I didn't think really fit nicely into one video, and this video for episode 2 of the Yapping series was originally going to be much different, but I figured why not go with Mouthwashing? There's no time like the present moment, so I might as well just record it. I did want to apologize for my microphone. I've gotten new headphones recently, and only now am I able to hear how bad my mic is, so hopefully I'll be able to get a new mic eventually, but this is what we're going to have to work with for now. My old headphones were so blown out I literally couldn't hear the fan running in the background, and now I can hear it on my mic, so I wanted to apologize for that because there isn't really a whole lot I can do about that. I'm not big into audio, but thank you all so much for bearing with me. It really does mean a lot. I know this Yapping session series is extremely informal, and that's kind of the point. I figured that I should at least get another episode out and kind of explain that this series is like this, where I'm basically genuinely just going to be yapping about random stuff that I like, and hopefully you end up enjoying it. I'm going to do my best to just continue to talk about things I like and just ramble on about basically unimportant details, but things that I tend to notice or things that I like. I got some really supportive comments or some really supportive messages from people saying that they were excited to see where the series was going forward, and hopefully I delivered. Again, this video I think was a good indicator of what the series is really going to be like like going forward. I don't think that introduction episode is necessarily bad, but I think this one is probably going to be more like what the future videos are going to be like, just with different topics, obviously. So leave suggestions of things that you would like me to talk about in the future. I think I have a few ideas of things I'm going to do, but here we are, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye for now.
If you find the one, you should never give her up. I think it's the way life changes when in love, yeah. I surround my soul with the positivity. That's why I don't worry about the things that I don't see, yeah. These days I don't worry about much. I think we should have some more fun. I still dream about the days when we were young. I'll take a hit and still finish in one, yeah, yeah.